Today we're going to translate English sentences into Spanish. We'll start with basic ones and then we'll move on to more difficult ones. How would you say in Spanish, I study Spanish every day? I study is yo estudio. Yo estudio. But in Spanish, it's not necessary to add the pronoun because the verb estudio already implies it. Spanish is español. Español. And every day, todos los días. Yo estudio español todos los días. Yo estudio español todos los días. So the structure is very similar. The next sentence is she is eating now. How would you say that in Spanish? She is ella. Ella. In Spanish, she is becomes ella está. Ella está. We use estar with the progressive tenses. Eating is comiendo. Comiendo. Just like in English, the ing verbs in Spanish end in yendo or ando. Ella está comiendo. Now is ahora. Ahora. Ella está comiendo ahora. Ella está comiendo ahora. So here again, we can omit the pronoun, but the verb conjugation for she is the same as he. So if you want to be very specific about who you're talking, then here it's recommended to add the pronoun. Ella está comiendo ahora. If you like this type of content, let me know in the comments and give the video a like. That helps the video reach more people that want to learn Spanish. Muchas gracias. All right, let's look at the past tense. How would you say they went to the cinema yesterday? They could be ellos or ellas. In this case, we'll use ellos. Went is fueron. Fueron is the verb conjugation for they in Spanish. To the cinema. To the in Spanish becomes al in this case. Al. Al is a contraction for a él. A él. But because we have vowel and vowel together, it becomes al. Cine is a masculine noun. Cine is cinema. So ellos fueron al cine and yesterday is ayer. Ayer. Ellos fueron al cine ayer. Ellos fueron al cine ayer. In this sentence and the previous one, we could actually move the adverb to the beginning, just like in English. So we could say yesterday they went to the cinema, the same thing in Spanish. Ayer ellos fueron al cine. It doesn't always work that way, but it does with this type of adverbs. Let's look at a more difficult sentence or structure. How would you say in Spanish, we have finished the homework? In Spanish, we could be nosotros or nosotras. We'll go with nosotros in this sentence. Have finished. So here we have to use a helping verb. In Spanish, it's haber. And the conjugation for that one is hemos. Hemos. Finished is the past participle. In Spanish, it becomes terminado. Hemos terminado. The homework, la tarea. Nosotros hemos terminado la tarea. Nosotros hemos terminado la tarea. We could leave out nosotros and just say hemos terminado la tarea. How would you say when I arrived, he had already left in Spanish? We'll start with when, which is cuando. Cuando. I arrived. Llegué. Llegué. We could also add the pronoun if you like, although it's not needed. Cuando yo llegué. He had already left. Él ya se había ido. Él ya se había ido. All right, so we have two parts to this sentence. We have the past simple, when I arrived, cuando llegué, and then we have the past perfect. Él ya se había ido. The tricky part here is that word already. In Spanish, we use ya, but then we also have the reflexive because he left himself. He left on his own. Él ya se había ido. We could also put ya at the end. Él se había ido ya. So here, ya as an adverb comes before the verb. That's why we put it in between the pronoun and the verb. Cuando llegué, él ya se había ido. In English, we could also say he had already left when I arrived. We could do the same thing in Spanish. Él ya se había ido cuando llegué. Alright, the next sentence is tomorrow I will travel to Spain. How would you say this in Spanish? Tomorrow is mañana, mañana. And in Spanish, we don't have the modal verbs like we do in English. We do have some verbs that act like the modal verbs, but the structure is not the same. In English, we need will to talk about the future, to create the future structure. In Spanish, the verb is conjugated to the future tense. So here, I will travel becomes viajaré. Mañana viajaré. We can add the pronoun as well. Mañana yo viajaré. To Spain is a España. Mañana viajaré a España. Mañana viajaré a España. Alright, the next sentence is I'm going to study tonight. How would you say that in Spanish? I'm going to study is voy a estudiar. Voy a estudiar. So in English, we use going to talk about the future as well. In Spanish, we use ir a. And tonight is esta noche. Voy a estudiar esta noche. Voy a estudiar esta noche. The next sentence is they will be working all day. How would you say that in Spanish? So this is the future progressive tense, right? So they is ellos or ellas. We'll use ellos for now. Will be. The verb conjugation for ellos in this case is estarán. Estarán. Working, trabajando. So here we see the ing verb as ando. Trabajando. And all day, todo el día. Ellos estarán trabajando todo el día. Ellos estarán trabajando todo el día. Ellos estarán trabajando todo el día. And the last sentence is I will have finished the book by tomorrow. How would you say that in Spanish? So here we're also working with the future, but it's the future perfect. I will have is yo habré. Yo habré. In this case, we're using haber as the helping verb. And the verb conjugation in future tense is habré. Yo habré. And then finished, terminado. Terminado. The book, el libro, it's a masculine noun, el libro, by tomorrow. Para mañana. Para mañana. Yo habré terminado el libro para mañana. Yo habré terminado el libro para mañana. A lot of the English sentences can be translated word for word in Spanish, with a few exceptions. The modal verbs being one. In English, we use will to talk about the future. In Spanish, we don't have an extra verb. It's just the main verb conjugated to the future tense. And then we also saw some instances where in English we don't have an article, but in Spanish we do. For example, every day. Todos los días. Most nouns in Spanish must be accompanied by one of the articles. And that's why we see that extra word. We saw it with all day as well. Todo el día. So there are a few instances where we don't see a word in English, but it is there in Spanish. And then there are instances where we see an extra word in English like will, and it's not there in Spanish. So you just have to be mindful of that. I hope this exercise was helpful. To keep learning Spanish, go watch this video next. Muchas gracias.